The village of Amuca rested quietly between rolling green hills and dusty red roads, a place where time moved slowly and dreams often felt too big for the narrow paths that connected mud houses and small farms. Every morning, the sun rose gently over the palm trees, casting golden light on the thatched roofs, and every evening it set with the same quiet promise that tomorrow would be just like today. But for Chuka and Adaeze, tomorrow was never just another day. Chuka was 28, tall and striking, with a strong jawline and deep, thoughtful eyes that seemed to carry both hope and worry at the same time. His hands were rough from years of farm work, but his mind was always elsewhere, searching for something bigger than the life he had been given. Adaeze was 22, radiant in a way that went beyond beauty. Her smile could soften even the hardest heart, and her eyes held a quiet strength that many in the village did not understand. She had lost her parents years ago, and all she had left of them was a small piece of land at the edge of the village, land that was more than soil. It was memory, identity, and the last connection to love she had known before Chuka. They were known in Amuca as the lovebirds. Where one was seen, the other was never far away. They fetched water together, worked together, laughed together. Even in their poverty, they carried a kind of joy that made others both admire and question them. One evening, as the sky burned orange and purple, they sat beneath the old mango tree near Adaeze's home. Chuka looked ahead, his expression distant. Adaeze noticed immediately. "What is it?" she asked softly. Chuka exhaled slowly, his voice low. "I cannot keep living like this, Adaeze. Every day I wake up and I feel like I am trapped, like there is more for us but I cannot reach it." Adaeze turned fully toward him, her eyes searching his. "We have each other," she said. "That is something." He smiled faintly. "It is everything, but it is not enough. I want to give you a better life, a real house, comfort, peace, not this constant struggle." She was quiet. Then he said the words that would change everything. "I want to travel abroad." The wind seemed to pause. Adaeze's heart skipped. "Abroad," she repeated slowly. "Yes," he said, "there are opportunities there, jobs, money, a future. If I can go, I can build something for us." Adaeze looked down at her hands. "Do you have the money?" she asked. Chuka shook his head. "No, that is the problem." Silence settled between them, heavy and thick. That night, Adaeze could not sleep. She lay on her thin mat, staring at the ceiling, listening to the distant sounds of insects and the quiet breathing of the night. Her parents' land. The thought came quietly at first, then louder. It was small but valuable. It was all she had left. The next day, she went to see her best friend, Ifeoma. Ifeoma was sharp, practical, and fiercely protective of Adaeze. When Adaeze told her everything, Ifeoma's face hardened. "You cannot be serious," she said. Adaeze swallowed. "I am. Sell your land, the only thing your parents left for you, just so a man can travel." Ifeoma's voice rose. "What if he does not make it? What if he forgets you? What if he never comes back?" "Chuka is not like that," Adaeze said quickly. Ifeoma shook her head. "Love can change, people can change, poverty can change people even faster." Adaeze's eyes filled with tears. "I believe in him." Ifeoma sighed deeply. Belief does not guarantee anything. But Adaeze had already made her decision. Within weeks, the land was sold. The money was placed in Chuka's hands. The day he was to leave, the entire village seemed to gather at the dusty road where the bus would take him to the city. Adaeze stood in front of him, her heart heavy but her face calm. "You will come back," she said quietly. Chuka held her hands tightly. "I will come back for you, I promise. Everything I do there is for us." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "Do not forget me." "Never is it." The bus arrived, loud and impatient. Chuka climbed in, his eyes never leaving hers. As the bus drove away, Adaeze felt something inside her shift, like a part of her had just left with him. The first month was filled with hope. Chuka called often, his voice excited, telling her about the new place, the buildings, the opportunities. The second month, the calls became less frequent, but they still came. By the third month, there was silence. No calls. No messages. Adaeze tried everything, but she could not reach him. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. The village began to whisper. Ifeoma watched her closely. I told you, she said one afternoon, not with cruelty, but with pain. Adaeze said nothing. At the market, women began to laugh quietly when she passed. That is the girl who sold her land for love. Love that vanished. Men shook their heads. Foolish girl. Each word cut deep, but she refused to break in front of them. At night, she cried alone. Eventually, something inside her hardened. She wiped her tears and stood up. If life would not be kind, she would fight it. She used the little she had left to start a small petty business, selling vegetables and basic goods. It was not easy. Some days she made almost nothing. Some days she went to bed hungry. But she kept going. Months turned into a year. Adaeze changed. She was no longer the soft girl who waited under the mango tree. She was stronger, quieter, carrying her pain like a hidden scar. Then one afternoon, as the sun hung high and unforgiving, a stranger stepped into the village. A tall man, well-dressed, confident. People turned to look. Whispers began. Who is he? Where did he come from? The man looked around slowly, his eyes searching. Then he spoke. I am looking for someone, he said. Adaeze. At that very moment, Adaeze stood at her small stall in the market, unaware that her past and her future had just collided, and that everything she believed she had lost was about to return in a way she could never have imagined. But the question remained. Was it too late? The market of Amuca was alive that afternoon, filled with the usual rhythm of bargaining voices, rustling wrappers, and the scent of fresh vegetables carried by the warm air. Life moved as it always had, simple, predictable, unchanged. But something was different. A presence. A shift that many could feel but could not yet explain. Chuka walked slowly through the narrow paths between stalls, his polished shoes touching the same red earth he had once left behind. Each step carried weight, not just of wealth, but of memory. People turned to look. Whispers followed him. Is that not Chuka? The same Chuka that left with nothing. He looks like a big man now. Chuka barely noticed them. His eyes searched. Every face, every corner, every movement. He had imagined this moment countless times, yet now that he was here, his heart beat harder than it ever had. What if she was gone? What if she had moved on? What if he had come back too late? Across the market, Adaeze stood behind her stall, focused, composed, unaware. Chuka stopped. His breath caught. There she was. Not the same girl he had left behind, but something stronger, something deeper. She had changed. There was a quiet strength in the way she stood, in the way she moved, in the way she spoke to her customers. For a moment, he could not move. He simply watched. Memories rushed through him like a flood. The mango tree. Her laughter. The day she placed everything she had into his hands. A weight settled in his chest. He took a step forward. Then another. The noise of the market seemed to fade around him. Adaeze handed a basket to a customer and wiped her hands lightly on her wrapper. Something stirred inside her. A feeling she could not explain. She turned slowly. Her eyes met his. Time stopped. The world disappeared. The noise, the people, everything faded into silence. It was just them. Chuka and Adaeze. Her eyes widened slightly. She blinked, as if trying to understand what she was seeing. Was this real? Or another cruel imagination? Chuka stood still, his voice caught in his throat. Adaeze. Her name finally escaped his lips, soft but clear. Her heart pounded. She took a small step back. The word barely formed. Silence stretched between them, heavy with everything unsaid. Then reality rushed back all at once. The months of silence. The pain. The waiting. Her expression changed. The warmth in her eyes hardened. You left, she said quietly. Her voice did not shake, but it carried something deeper than anger. Chuka swallowed. I know. You stopped calling. I know. I could not reach you. I know. Each word struck him like a blow. People began to gather subtly, sensing something important. Adaeze took another step back. Do you know what it was like, she asked, her voice rising slightly now. Do you know what it felt like to wait and not know if you were alive or dead? Chuka shook his head slowly. I tried. Her eyes flashed. The word carried disbelief. You disappeared. I thought I had lost everything. Chuka stepped closer, his voice urgent. I never forgot you, not for a single day. She let out a soft bitter laugh. But you forgot to come back. The crowd grew. Whispers filled the air. Adaeze stood tall now, her pain no longer hidden. I gave you everything I had, she continued, my land, my trust, my future. Her voice cracked slightly. And you left me with nothing. Chuka's eyes filled with emotion. I did not leave you, he said, I was forced into silence. She frowned. What does that even mean? He hesitated. The past he had buried began to rise. When I got there, things were not what I expected, he said slowly. The job I was promised did not exist. I was stranded, no papers, no money. Adaeze's expression shifted slightly, but she said nothing. I struggled, he continued. I worked any job I could find. I slept in places you cannot imagine. I was barely surviving. His voice grew heavier. Then one day I was robbed, everything taken, even my phone. A murmur moved through the crowd. I had no way to contact you. Adaeze's eyes searched his face, looking for truth. Months passed before I could stand again, before I could find my way back up, and by the time I did, I had nothing, no number, no contact, nothing. Silence fell again. The anger in Adaeze's eyes flickered. But the pain remained. So you stayed away, she said quietly. Chuka shook his head. I came back as soon as I could stand as a man worthy of you. That is why I am here. He stepped closer. Everything I have now, I built it with one purpose. Her breath caught. He reached into his pocket and brought out something small. A ring. The crowd gasped softly. I promised you, he said, his voice steady now, I would come back for you. He dropped to one knee right there in the middle of the market. Adaeze, will you marry me? The entire market fell silent. All eyes on her. Her heart raced. Memories collided with reality. Pain battled love. Doubt battled hope. Before she could respond, a voice cut through the silence. Do not do it. Everyone turned. It was Ifeoma. She stepped forward, her eyes sharp, her expression serious. Adaeze, think carefully. The tension rose again. Two paths stood before her. Forgive. Or walk away. Adaeze looked at Chuka. Then at Ifeoma. Then back at Chuka. Her lips parted. But before she could speak, someone else pushed through the crowd. A woman, disheveled, tired, carrying a heavy burden in her eyes and her body. The same woman who once mocked Adaeze the loudest. Now visibly pregnant, clothes worn, face filled with shame. She stumbled forward. And collapsed right at Adaeze's stall. The crowd erupted in shock. And in that moment, everything changed again. The marketplace of Amuca had never been so silent. Moments ago it had been filled with tension, love, anger, and a decision that could change two lives forever. Now it felt like the entire village was holding its breath, waiting for something no one could predict. The pregnant woman stood in the center of it all, trembling. Her clothes were worn, her hair disheveled, her face drained by hardship and shame. One hand rested on her swollen belly as if holding herself together, while the other pressed against her chest as she struggled to breathe properly. Adaeze stared at her. Chuka remained on one knee, frozen, the ring still open in his hand. Even Ifeoma had gone still, her protective stance softening into confusion. The pregnant woman swallowed hard. I know I do not belong here, she said, her voice shaking, but I had nowhere else to go. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Adaeze's voice was barely a whisper. Who are you? The woman looked down, then slowly lifted her eyes. I am the one who used to mock you. Silence fell again, deeper this time. Adaeze frowned slightly, not fully understanding. The woman stepped forward carefully. I laughed when you sold your land, she said. I said you were foolish, I said you were blind. Her voice cracked. I was wrong. A few villagers gasped quietly. I got married, she continued, to a rich man, a man everyone envied. She let out a hollow laugh. But there was no love there, only pride, control, and pain. Her hand tightened over her stomach. He beat me, she said quietly. He humiliated me, and when I tried to leave, he threw me out. A ripple of shock moved through the crowd. Now I have nowhere, she said, no home, no pride, only this child. Tears fell freely down her face. And I came back here because I finally understand what I destroyed in you. Her eyes lifted to Adaeze. Forgive me. The marketplace felt heavier than ever. Adaeze stood completely still, her heart pounding violently in her chest. Everything she had endured, every insult, every whisper, every lonely night, flashed through her mind. But something inside her shifted. Not anger. Not pride. Understanding. She looked at the woman for a long moment. Then slowly she stepped forward. The crowd held its breath. Adaeze stopped in front of her. For a second, no one moved. Then Adaeze gently placed a hand on the woman's shoulder. You are not my enemy anymore, she said softly. The woman broke down completely, crying into her hands. Behind them, Chuka slowly stood up from his kneeling position, still holding the ring, his eyes not leaving Adaeze. Ifeoma exhaled slowly, stepping back, her earlier tension fading into quiet acceptance. But the story was not finished yet, because Chuka still had not been answered. And Adaeze's heart was still standing between the past that broke her and the future that was finally returning to her. Chuka stepped forward slowly. Adaeze, he said quietly. She turned to him. The entire village waited. The ring still shimmered in his hand. And this time, there was no interruption. Only a decision waiting to be made. The air in the marketplace changed. What had begun as tension slowly softened into something deeper, something human. The pregnant woman wept quietly, her body shaking, her strength almost gone. Villagers who once stood in judgment now looked at her with a different kind of silence, one that carried understanding instead of mockery. Adaeze remained beside her, steady and calm. We will help you, she said gently. Those simple words spread through the crowd like light breaking through darkness. The woman nodded weakly, unable to speak, her tears falling freely onto the red earth. Behind them, Chuka stood still, watching Adaeze. In that moment he understood something clearly. She had not just endured pain. She had grown beyond it. Ifeoma stepped closer, her arms folding slowly, not in resistance this time, but in reflection. She looked at Adaeze, then at Chuka. Maybe I was wrong, she said quietly. Adaeze turned slightly. Ifeoma sighed. Not about the risk, she continued, but about you. She looked directly at Chuka. You came back. Chuka nodded slowly. I said I would. The silence that followed was no longer heavy. It was calm. Waiting. Chuka stepped forward again, stopping a few steps in front of Adaeze. His voice was softer now, not filled with urgency, but with truth. I lost everything once, he said, but I never lost you in my heart. Adaeze looked at him. Her eyes no longer carried the same sharp pain. Now they held something else. Clarity. You hurt me, she said. I know. You disappeared when I needed you the most. I know. Her voice did not rise. It stayed calm. But love did not disappear, she continued. Chuka breath caught. It stayed even when I tried to bury it. A quiet murmur moved through the crowd. Adaeze took a slow step forward. If I choose you again, she said, it will not be because of the past. It will be because of who you are now. Chuka nodded, his eyes fixed on hers. That is all I ask. She looked down at the ring in his hand. The same ring that had once felt like a question. Now it felt like an answer waiting to be accepted. Slowly, Adaeze extended her hand. A soft gasp rose from the villagers. Chuka gently took her hand, his fingers steady but his heart racing. He slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Adaeze smiled. A real smile. Not the fragile one from before. Not the forced one she had worn during her struggles. But something full, something whole. Yes, she said softly. The marketplace erupted. Laughter, cheers, voices rising in celebration. Even those who once mocked her now clapped, some out of joy, others out of quiet shame. Ifeoma shook her head with a small smile. You stubborn girl, she said, but her voice carried pride. Chuka pulled Adaeze gently into an embrace. This time, she did not hesitate. She held him back. Tightly. Days later, the village of Amuca gathered again. But this time, it was not for tension. It was for celebration. The wedding was simple, yet beautiful. Palm leaves decorated the open space, Fabrics of bright colors hung between trees, music filled the air, and laughter echoed across the land. Adaeze stood dressed in a stunning traditional attire, her wrapper rich and vibrant, coral beads around her neck, her hair styled elegantly, her beauty radiant and confident. Chuka stood beside her in traditional attire as well, strong and proud, his eyes never leaving her. They were no longer just lovebirds. They were partners who had survived distance, pain, doubt, and time. As they exchanged their vows, the entire village watched with joy. Even the pregnant woman stood among them, now cleaner, calmer, supported by others, her face no longer filled with shame but with gratitude. Life had humbled her, and life had restored Adaeze. As the sun set that evening, casting a golden glow over Amuca, Chuka and Adaeze stood hand in hand, looking toward the horizon. The same horizon that once separated them. Now it belonged to them. Together. And this time, there was no fear. Only peace.
My dear friends, lovers of stories, if this story touched your heart, then you are already part of our storytelling family. Hit the subscribe button right now and join us here on Telltale Stories TV.